Hi everyone, today is the 31st of January 2018 in New Zealand, and today I'm going to talk about the myth that women hate being touched in birth. There is without a doubt that during birth, particularly labor, women all of their senses are heightened. They may have wanted a certain smell in their room and put that in their birth plan, and then when their labor unfolds, they just don't want it. They may think that they are going to love being touched, and then they hate it. They may feel that they'll be very sensitive to who's in the room, and they may find that they couldn't care less. So our senses are heightened both ways. One is we dislike things more, and we don't care about things more. And so the question is touch. What does touch mean? And when Birthing Better families developed the Birthing Better skills, touch was one of those really important things. I mean, it was a thing. Men want to help their women in birth, particularly if they labor. Men want to participate in the birth of their baby if it's a non-laboring cesarean. Men are human beings first. They're men second. They're fathers next, and they're your partner fourth. Because you and your partner can split up, but you're both going to be a mother and a father forever. So men wanted to know how to touch, and most men understood that sexual touch was not the same as either preparing a woman's body for birth, which most men don't know how to do, and that's what Birthing Better skills excel at, or the touch in labor. That's different. It's not sexual. And because a lot of touch between families is cuddle or sexuality, birth touch isn't something that people are familiar with. They don't have the skills. They don't know how to do it. So there are several things about touch that you need to know around why women don't like to be touched in birth. Because it's not the right time, it's not the right place, and it's not the right way. And so when a woman is touched, particularly in labor, and when labor is quite progressive, if someone touches her at the wrong time, that means that the contraction's very intense at that moment, then she doesn't want to be touched because it's a distraction. If it's the wrong place, she knows it's the wrong place. She knows that a person might be saying to her, relax your shoulders, and she knows relaxing my shoulders isn't going to make one bit of difference. But the person touching her on the outside is seeing the shoulders up like this and thinking that they're doing her a service by getting her to drop her shoulders. But babies don't come out the shoulders, they come out through the pelvis. And the third of the right way, and that's complicated because between couples, you don't know what type of sexual touch they use with one another. Some have a gentleness, some are quite rough, then they like hard sex. Some people are clumsy. Some people don't really feel whether their touch is being perceived of or not. They just touch. And cuddling tends to be quite passive. When you sit inside someone's embrace, whether you're embracing a child or holding a child or whether you're being cuddled, that's quite passive. In other words, you sort of curl up into another person. But touch in labor does sometimes become passive, and we see lots of pictures of women hanging on men. They wouldn't care whether it's their husband or someone else or just a tree stump, really. They're just hanging. You see women and men head to head with a man's hands on her shoulder or a woman's hands on his shoulder. That could be anyone that isn't particularly that partner. You sometimes see a man with his hands on a woman's back in labor while she's bending over. Once again, that could be anyone. So the question is how do we create a touch that's the right time, the right place, and the right way that a woman's partner or other knows how to do while she's giving birth? And that took us a while as Birthing Better families to figure it out. And the right way was very important. And we have an ebook on that explains the different layers. You get to feel the different layers of your body. Can you tighten up your skin layer without tightening up other parts of your body? Well, no, you can't. Can you tighten up your flesh or your fat without tensing up other parts of your body? No, you can't. Can you tighten up your muscles without tightening up other parts of your bodies? Yes, you can. Can you tighten up your bones without tightening up other parts of your bodies? Well, no, you can't. So we know that the tension layer is in the muscles. But what most people don't understand is that the skin is held on to the flesh with something, and the flesh is held on to the muscles with something, and the muscles are held onto the bone with something, and that something is called connective tissue. And that connective tissue is really what holds tension in all of us. So when you hear, well, if you want to do a split, you keep stretching. Yes, to some degree, it's the muscle fibers that you're stretching, but mostly it's the connective tissue. Now, we know connective tissue when it comes to its end, called ligaments and tendons. But what most of us don't know, even though most of us are aware of it, is when you pull the skin off a chicken breast or you cut a piece of meat and you see little flecks other than fatty flecks, that's all connective tissue. So muscles are wrapped up. Every bundle in the muscle is wrapped up with connective tissues. And muscles are adhered to the bones with connective tissues. And the flesh is adhered to the muscles, and the skin is adhered to the flesh and the muscles with connective tissue. And it's the connective tissue that we really want women to learn to soften. So we need to learn to touch women so that they cue to a softening, so that touch becomes a way to communicate with them non-verbally the need for them to soften inside of their body. So when we developed the layers and understood the layers, then we knew that if we pressed down a little bit on some part of the body and didn't pop up, but slowly, so if we pressed down, if we popped up, a person couldn't relax. But if we pressed down and we slowly, slowly, slowly came up, that person could soften under our touch. And you can do that for yourself. So you can put your hand here, press a little bit, pop up, see what happens. Put your hand here, slowly, slowly, slowly let go and soften under your touch. When you can do it, you can remember how slowly you moved, but the other person has to be directed to intentionally soften under your touch. So we learned how to touch, to cue women to soften inside. When to touch, it depended on the circumstances, and that's where the ebook on the verbal and nonverbal communication is so important. Because if you guys have good communication, the woman might take your hand and place it on her shoulder or on her hip or on her back, and you know what to do. If she doesn't, then she can take your hand off or nudge it. You know to take it off. But then in the communication skills, she knows to nod again, please put it back on, if she can't verbally articulate it. So we learned the how to touch, and the where to touch really came down to recognizing that the only place the woman has to relax is inside her pelvis. Labor pains can be very intense. We know that, all of us who have labored. They can hurt, big time, hurt, terrible. And they come in waves, they come in contractions, and they get more intense, they get longer, and they get stronger. And so we found that there are 5 phases for every contraction. So depending on what's happening, and you have to be adaptable and adjustable, is some women like to be touched just as the contraction is starting. Other women don't need to be touched at the beginning of the contraction, but they like to be touched at the peak, or they like to be touched once the peak is starting to decline. And we know from working with the Birthing Better skills and the touch softening that women have to show tension. It's a very rare woman in labor who is relaxed on the outside and relaxed on the inside. And it's the inside that's the most important. So if a woman is raising her shoulders, and you do that now, raise your shoulders up and then soften inside your pelvis. you can do that. You can have your shoulders here. You can be like that, tense as, but you can intentionally soften inside. So if you relax your shoulders and tense up in your pelvis, that doesn't cause your shoulders to rise up. So you can have relaxed shoulders, relaxed hands, and you're still tense inside. But that's where your baby has to come down through and out. So in fact, having women, the Lamaze, ragdolling women, didn't stop women from having delays in first or second stage. Yoga, people who do a lot of yoga and are very flexible, they're often quite tight inside because yoga doesn't deal with that. Pilates and other core exercises that women do, that will tighten up your core, and that's where your baby needs to come through. So women don't like touch because it's done at the wrong time, and it's often done when women don't need to be distracted. So if we're seeing women in a lot of pain in labor, or if we see a child in a lot of pain, we tend to want to touch when they are at the peak of their pain. That's our human natural response. Touch them now, they're hurting now. But for a lot of women in labor, that isn't a good time. But 5 seconds later, when the peak of the contraction is going down and they're trying to unwind from the contraction, then that's a better time. The place to touch, really your whole focus should be around not the outside of the pelvis, but cueing the women to soften on the inside of the pelvis. That's what's the most important. And the best way to touch is not to be going around like this, which is massage. A lot of women find that distracting. So having what's called a static touch with a slight depression and slow release allows women to concentrate on where you're touching her and how to soften inside using touch as a cue. So as we grow a skilled birthing population, and you're the ones that are going to do it, your generation, I'm past having babies. My kids are past having babies. So we're on to the next generation. And the way that you can help us, we're a charitable trust in New Zealand called Common Knowledge, and we need you to spread these videos across social media platforms. We need you to share these videos to people who would have an interest, groups you're involved in, friends and relatives who are pregnant. We need you to like the pages. We need you to purchase the Birthing Better resources, because every purchase returns to the charitable trust so that we can continue to grow a skilled birthing population. We're not a private entity. We're a tax-exempt charitable organization. And so everything that you do is a donation to us. And if you want to just give a donation to us, our PayPal account is info@birthingbetter.com. We're now at birthingbetter.org, but when we started all of this in 2000, when we went online, we were a .com. And it's really hard to change that back end on services like PayPal as a primary account. So, but we still accept donations, and we are a charitable organization. So we'll come again and talk to you hopefully tomorrow about another myth around childbirth. And once I'm finished with all of the myths, and by the way, we have a playlist on YouTube of all these myths as well. Then I'll start to talk about what's real, what's true in childbirth, and that will help us change the message. Because once we understand really what we're dealing with and the truth about childbirth, then it's a lot easier to explain it to one another. And that's our goal. We need to have a simple message to tip the childbirth trend into a skills-focused trend for all births, no matter where you birth, who's with you, or what happens to you or around you. So see you another day. Bye-bye.